We're talking to Donna Jackson of Project 21. I want to ask you, Donna, about reparations because, I mean, I understand the idea that when something happens to a person or a group of people in this lifetime, that there's liability, there should be restitution, and so forth. But it gets pretty confusing when something's hundreds of years ago and we're dealing with descendants of people. And it seems like this type of thing that they're pushing in California and other places would be pretty hard to execute? Are they going to do genetic tests on everyone? What about the people who immigrated from Africa after slavery? I mean, and they're asking for millions of dollars per person. So, can you talk about this subject?
Reparations is something they bring up every time there's an election cycle coming near, and they're afraid that they're going to lose the minority votes. We know that there's no slave owners today, and if there's a slave owner today, then of course they should pay. And if they're slaves that we have today, then they should pay those slaves. But there's no slave owners, there's no slaves today. And so the notion that someone should be penalized based upon the color of their skin or rewarded based upon their color of their skin is ridiculous. And we should remember that 40% of the white Americans that are here, their families weren't here during slavery. So why are they being penalized? Everyone has contributed to the building of this country. And everyone should has the opportunity to be able to forge their own success. Giving people money that they didn't earn is not going to change the dynamic. We should really be doing is rolling back regulations that create artificial barriers so that people cannot forge their own initiatives, not some kind of government safety net or a golden parachute that's only going to lead to what we have right now, and that is permanently government dependent individuals that don't know how to forge and take care of their own selves and communities. So reparations,
Yeah.
that's silly. It's never going to happen. It never stand up in court, and we should move on from that conversation until and talk more about self-reliance.
Right. It's very refreshing to hear you call it as on its face that it's silly and nonsensical because it's part of the mainstream conversation. So, it's kind of normalized day after day. And people are really kind of expecting $1 million plus payday here. So, I want to ask you about our culture because I've felt the tension increasing race relations in the last few years, and I've noticed the big corporations like Disney promoting conflict between races in the U.S. and around the world. And I was wondering if you could comment on that because at one point, Black History Month really had a great meaning, and it was kind of bringing in stories that weren't being told enough. And now we have another story of oppressor and victim. And I was wondering if you could talk about what you've noticed, the Overton window, and how that's changed in the last few years. Have you noticed the acceleration? Have you felt the tension? What is Project 21 saying about the culture and the media and the race baiting that's going on?
Well, we're 100% against critical race theory. In fact, in our blueprint for a better deal, we talk about critical race theory. The problem is that this is not about serving to do any type of healing. It's not about bringing our country together. It's about causing divisions. It's actually more harmful to African Americans than it is to white Americans. Because what it says is that if you are born a certain color, why even try? The system is against you. You'll never succeed, and you need permission from someone else to succeed. That means that we have no control over our future. It's causing segregation. Everything that we fought to change is actually being ushered in by these notions and these principles of critical race theory and dividing people. What is anger going to do in terms of improving education, getting rid of crime, uh, building economic upward mobility? Nothing. What we should be looking at is uniting behind this principle that we're all free to forge our own paths. That's what the Constitution gives us. When they talk about equity, it's about making sure that everyone is equally poor. We should be talking about opportunities, and everyone has that. There's nothing standing in anyone's way to stop them from succeeding, except themselves when they buy into this mental notion that somehow the color of your skin determines your outcome. It doesn't. We all have the same brain, we all have the same blood, and we all have the same capability. And there's no way that you can tell me that a person's outcome is determined by the color of their skin. That's like saying that my outfit is going to determine if I can do well or not. That's silly. It's about my own ingenuity, my own ability, and what I put forth. But what people want you to do is be focused on other people so that they can expand the government. That's what it's about. Expanding the government and accepting the fact that somehow bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. know what is better for our lives than our own selves. And that makes no sense.
Right. And what I've noticed is that there are really two main narratives. On the left, they're saying that there's systemic racism and that it prevents a lot of people from getting a fair shake. And so they want to mandate, oh, on corporate boards, we need to mandate minorities and LGBTQ and all the rest. We need to force corporations to do it, affirmative action, all these other things because of the systemic racism. And then the other narrative, of course, is that there is no systemic racism. America has some racism. It exists somewhere, but it's not part of the system. It's not preventing anyone from having those opportunities in America. So it's hard to have a conversation when people have such a basic disagreement on the nature of our system. But to just point out this conflict, let's talk about policing, because whenever there's, and certainly there are problems with policing, but when there is a problem with a policeman using excessive force, it seems like they point out that, well, it's because of systemic racism that this happened. And now recently I've seen 5 black police officers being called racist for using excess force against a black person. So it's hard for me to even wrap my head around that. I don't understand it. Have you been able to figure that one out?
This is the whole thing about this racism is it takes the responsibility away from the individual to have control over their own lives. They push a narrative out there that says that you're not in control in anything that happens to you. The Memphis police officers that killed this young man, and that's a terrible thing. I have family members there. What the truth that didn't come out is that this was a personal vendetta based upon that police officer who was dating the the ex-girlfriend of that police officer. So it had nothing to do with the color of their skin. Unless we can't combat racism by creating more racism. The fact that they force every scenario to fit into this box about race is a problem, because then people never pay attention to what their commitment is to making sure that they have safe communities. In a community, you need to have police officers to keep us safe. Who's disproportionately hurt by the having pushing back and getting this defund the police? It's minorities in that community. Who has the most issues when you're seeing rising crime? It's the people in that community. So what we've done is we've taken away the victims, the voice of the victims, and we're protecting the criminals. We shouldn't have this uh, getting rid of bails or minimum sentences as we advocate in the blueprint. The thing is that if we have safe communities that are economically strong and with families that can thrive, then you'll see a decrease in crime. You'll see less tension, because what we're saying is when you have people that feel like they have no opportunities, that's when you have these issues of crime, when you have these issues of dropout rates, high pregnancy. All of those types of things are symptoms of a greater issue that stems from the deterioration of families in the community. And that's what we should be concentrating on: building strong families, building a strong economy, building safe neighborhoods, and then you won't see the issues that we have. But we're using jealousy, envy, all of these things, and all of these liberal policies that actually incentivize more of the destruction of communities. And then we're advocating for the federal government to create even more steel.
Very well said. And, I find it interesting that the Democratic Party tries to co opt the Black community. In fact, I remember when Joe Biden said that if you don't vote for me, then you aren't even Black. So, can you comment on that? Because it seems like there's this narrative, and it's really repeated over and over again by the mainstream media, that this oppressor victim dynamic with blacks and whites, just the idea that to be a real Black person, you have to be liberal for some reason. And if you go against that, as Candace Owens and Kanye West and others have done, then you get called an Uncle Tom. People come out of the woodwork with all kinds of racist statements against you. Can you comment on being conservative Black American?
Yeah, I mean, the most racist individuals that I've ever met are liberals. They're the ones that call me the most names. They're the ones that create policies that create barriers for me not to thrive economically. They're the ones that are always out there pushing for victimhoods. You know, they created a war on poverty that created more poverty, because it's not about getting people out of poverty. It's about how many people you service and keeping them permanent victims. I always say there's two ways that you grow the government: war and the poor. And that's one thing that they've been determined to do. And this notion of actually creating this hostile environment where if you are an African American, you can't think any other way is racist in itself. I mean, white Americans can be liberal, conservative, they can be Greenpeace, they can be socialist, communist, but Black people have to be liberal or nothing. That's a racist statement in itself. And the fact that they actually encourage this kind of browbeating of anyone who wants to do anything different is a problem. But I can tell you this: they've created a war on religion, and one of the things that sets us free is the fact that we have a strong faith. And there are people, brave men and women that I work with, that stand up, that are very courageous. And they don't cow down to the fact that they're going to show that not everybody that the mainstream media shows you that looks like us believes that way. And the voice in the minority community, in the African American community, is just as varied as everyone else. But they use these fear tactics because if the left doesn't have at least 85% support, they don't win. And so what they try to do is create this sort of terror, organized crime, in order to force people to stay under in a certain situation. But the hope is, and really the bright spot is, that you have black males, young black males, that are actually leading the charge in coming out of what the liberal left has created for us. They see and they want to have strong families. They want to have economic opportunities. They want to work. They don't want someone to send them a check. They want to have pride in the fact that they're able to take care of their own communities. And that's what we need, because if the government is giving you a check, they're paying you not to be innovative, they're paying you not to be productive, they're paying you not to be competitive, they're paying you to not be homeowners and not participate in this American dream. But we're not standing for that.
And you know, it's interesting that it's not just happening with the Black community. I've seen with the Hispanic community that they also have these conservative cultural values against abortion, having strong faith, family, belief in strong nuclear family structure. And yet it is those freebie giveaways from the Democrats that they try to lure them to the other side, but they're much more naturally predisposed to conservatism. So we are going to continue the conversation with Melanie from Project 21. We're going to take a quick break. Donna, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.